Hey everyone, I am Heather Garozzo, also known as Sapphire. Welcome to our Women in Esports panel. I'm super excited to be here today with some incredible women. As many of you know, March is Women's History Month. And today, the VALORANT Game Changers are kicking off. This is an incredible event for women in VALORANT. We're super excited to see these game changers really defining what it means to be a pro gamer, celebrating all of their amazing successes. We have a great panel joining me today, focusing on all the different parts that make up esports, from game publishers, community organizers, pro gamers, and tournament organizers. So it's really the perfect mix today. For a little background, I am a former professional gamer, world champion, observer, doing a lot of VALORANT events, and I work for an esports team called Dignitas, which also competes in VALORANT, both with a women's and a men's team, and we have a League of Legends team. Joining me today, we've got an incredible group of women. First, we have Shelby Ulisse, event producer at Riot Games, Nicolette Barker, owner of VALORANT, Melanie Capone, pro gamer for Cloud9 White on their women's VALORANT team, and Berkey, competitive operations coordinator for Nerdstreetgamers. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Of
Hello.
course.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, let's kick it off. Start with some questions. So, again, we've got a really diverse background here. Let's start with Shelby. So, how did you get started in esports? Talk to us about your journey from getting where you started to where you are today at Riot Games.
Yeah, I'd been working in events for about 6 years, mostly producing Hollywood events and events for nonprofits. I ended up getting the chance to go to 2018 Worlds for League of Legends in Korea, and it was an incredible experience. It was super inspiring. KD debuted, so it was just such a special and fun event. And when I was there, I really felt like I needed to be part of this community, and I really wanted to work on these types of events. So about a year later, I joined Riot, and I've been working for the past year and a half, mostly on LCS, but I'm really excited to now lead the Game Changers initiative.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate all you've done for VALORANT esports. Moving down the line, Nikki, the founder of VALORANT. How did you get started in all this? How did you build the biggest women's VALORANT community?
So, it was just on a whim, really. A friend of ours posted something in the VALORANT subreddit, and I was like, hey, that looks really cool. Why don't I just help her out with that? Because I've built this, or I've made Discord servers before. So I was like, why not? And it just kind of blew up from there. Females in gaming were looking for kind of like a safe haven to just play games with other girls. And I was like, why don't we just start running tournaments in houses and all of that to kind of get everybody involved with a little bit more, because everybody's interested in competitive. There's just no outlets to get there or no right way to get there. So that's really just how it started, and it completely blew up from there. And here we are today.
Awesome. Well, a lot of you know Mel. She's just like all over Reddit, all over like every competitive match tournament. Mel, tell us about your journey from, I know there's some observing in there too, which I love, and now you're one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because I often reference you when I kind of like tell this story, but I just started playing CS when I was like in my teens. I played ESA when I was 16, went to LAN when I was 16, and I think it's kind of like the opposite of kind of what Sapphire has gone through, where she was like a pro, now she's an observer because all the info that she had when she was a pro informed her observing. But for me, I started observing when I was like 17. I thought it was really interesting and cool. And I got my first gig when I was 18, and I was doing that for like full time for about 2 years. And when VALORANT came out, that was kind of my debut to pro. So that's kind of just how it went down.
Awesome. And next up, Allie from Nerdstreetgamers.
I originally kind of started my journey in this by going to localhost in Philadelphia to request to use the venue for a Twitch Philadelphia meetup, since I was just streaming casually for fun at that time. And then I walked out of that meeting with an internship, and I've just kind of said yes to every single opportunity that I've gotten at Nerdstreet to learn more. about just running events and on LAN. And after managing one of the LAN centers for a few months, when the pandemic hit, I made the switch to the events department and started going from there.
Awesome. Well, yeah, again, great to have all of you. I think each one of you brings a very unique perspective, and I know we all collectively feel like it's very important to have this panel today, because we want to inspire the next generation of women to get involved in esports, whether observing or running a community or playing as a professional or creating events or creating games. There's so many opportunities here for women, and we're super excited to help define that path for other women that want to get in the space. So moving along here, I know a lot of us have been in this space for a while, and we used to really kind of be the only women in the room at different events on teams, and creating that community, creating that safe space is something that has been important, because we know there can be some potentially toxicity involved, and we want to encourage other women to compete, to work in the industry. And that's where Nikki, for example, with VALORANT is doing something truly special. So Nikki, how did you, or what motivated you to build VALORANT? What started that? And what really defines that as a safe space for women in gaming and VALORANT?
So I guess in comparison to everybody on this panel today, I'm a baby in the world of gaming. I started out in League maybe like 7 years ago, give or take. And everybody knows League is pretty bad. It can be pretty bad. It can be pretty toxic. So yeah, and once I saw that opportunity to build this safe space for women, I was like, why not? Why not take it to the next step? Why not provide these opportunities, and not just competitive, but also the back-end spaces in production, observing, casting, all of that fun stuff. And really that was just kind of the motivator here. Why can't I provide something for women in gaming? I'm never going to become pro, so why can't I make a difference elsewhere?
That's great. And then Allie, on the Nerd Street side, how are you and Nerd Street building a safe and inclusive space for women and gender diverse folks through VALORANT?
I think the most important thing is first to always listen to those who are marginalized in the space and to provide them with opportunity. So hiring women, working with women, working with anyone that also has an open mind to the space and doesn't provide a toxic element. Because at the end of the day, that's another thing that's lacking, not just on the competitor side, but who participates on the industry side. So for me and for Nerd Street, it's to provide that opportunity to the women to compete and to work.
That's great. And then from my perspective on the team side with Dignitas, I just think it's so important that these esports organizations have the representation of women across our competitive teams, across content creators, across the business. I know we as an organization make sure we do everything we can to ensure that our women's teams are getting the same access to competitive resources, to boot camps, to travel, to equipment that our men's teams, so that they feel like, and they should be, treated with the same level of respect, the same opportunities as our men's players. And I know that's something that I always encourage other organizations to ensure that you're having women across your industry, because they exist. I think it's something like 45% or so of gamers are women. So we should be seeing that across the organizations. And I know it's getting better. We've seen a lot of teams in advance of Game Changers actually announce women's rosters, along with Cloud9 and Dignitas. TSM has joined the mix. CLG has joined the mix. I know Gen G has a bit of a pug roster as well. So really great to see more organizations supporting women. So Shelby, we've got obviously Game Changers starting, and this is a really exciting opportunity for women. We just had 32 teams of 5 women compete in the qualifiers. So with the Game Changers program, what are the objectives for this initiative, and what can fans expect for the future?
Yeah, when we were building this initiative, we really wanted to go beyond kind of the base level of supporting female pros. We wanted to grow the entire scene, and that was something we had in mind. We talked a lot with VALORANT, we talked a lot with Nerdstreet, we talked a lot with pros and different organizations to try and figure out kind of the best initiatives that Riot wanted to support. So we sort of broke out Game Changers into 3 main programs. The first is obviously the series, and that's what's happening this weekend. We're really looking to highlight the top female talent, and we really want to help teams increase their fandom and grow their brand. I think it's really important over the long term. But we have 2 other really great initiatives that we're kicking off later this year. The first being in partnership with VALORANT. We're supporting their monthly tournaments, and we're calling this Game Changers Academy. The goal of this program really is to grow the community of women that are playing VALORANT and encourage healthy but low stakes competition where, we're hoping that these folks that maybe have been prevented from playing too much VALORANT because they don't have a community, or they feel, like when they play a game, there's potentially toxic individuals that they're playing with, that kind of thing. We want to just encourage them to keep playing and potentially become the future of our female pro talent. So really, really excited about those tournaments. And lastly, we're working on a training program with our casters and analysts. We've seen a real lack of female casters and analysts applying for our tournaments, and we think that it's a huge part of the VALORANT ecosystem, and we really want to create something that has curriculum that provides women with all the tools they need to become the best VALORANT casters and analysts. And I know that there's talent out there that maybe is undiscovered, so we're really hoping to, harness that and propel them into future careers. That's only 2021, so we have a lot set for this year, but it's a long-term goal. We really want to promote women, over multi years, so definitely looking forward to it.
That's exciting. I know, as again, someone that has been in the esports industry for, I guess it's 20 years now, so that really dates me. I've never seen so much excitement around a game, around a community for women than VALORANT. Like, it's just, I think I'm just so deep into this, and I'm so invested because there's so many women coming from all walks of life, from all other esports communities to congregate around this game, and just seeing women, studying game demos, and they know all the top strats that teams are doing, and they're working on their aim with various tools. It's super exciting and very inspiring. So obviously there's a lot of amazing things coming up, but historically esports has been a bit of a challenging space for women, hence why we've got all these amazing programs and initiatives and communities to help combat that. But I truly believe, the only way to really solve some of these challenges is to face them and talk about them. So Mel, we're going to go over to you first. What are some of the challenges that either you faced or you've identified that women's only teams and events have historically faced, and how do we address them and fix them?
At the casual level, it goes without saying there's like a lot of gender placed toxicity, obviously just trying to climb in ranks, just trying to get better at the game by playing the game. Obviously, there's just so many barriers when it comes to just getting harassed. I mean, just the other day I was playing ranked on stream, obviously in Immortal, top 1% of 1% of the world, that I'm getting called slurs. So, I mean, obviously I have a tough skin after however many years I've been playing games, but there's so many more girls out there that are little girls, young women, young teenagers that don't have a thick skin because who would expect that to, be in their hobby, right? I mean, even Jazzy was there and she's 16, and it's a bit sad that we have to expect 16-year-old girls to have a tough skin just to compete in the game that they want to play. So yeah, it goes without saying that toxicity is a big obstacle. The things that affects more pro play, I think, girls getting opportunities in pro teams, it's more how do I say it? I would say it's kind of a boys' club. Obviously, like in MDL, even if you look at CS:GO, like there's obviously cliques, like certain people stick together, so on and so forth. But I think that's definitely expounded when you're a woman. It's just obviously like people say you're a woman, like they kind of just were like, okay, if I had to pick two people the same caliber and a guy is making a team, he'd probably just go with his friend, right? Like he's a guy, like they're friends, they can keep like, the same atmosphere, like guys joke around about the same things, they probably have something to relate to, so it would make sense on that level. I think that's something that kind of goes under the radar. They just don't get the same opportunities when it comes to being picked up and scouted for these tier 1 teams. I think it's really cool what EG is doing actually, so I hope that becomes kind of breaks down those barriers. And I think they definitely have, not to say that's definitely like super widespread, and not to say I don't have any personal experience with that, but I can definitely see like change has occurred, because Valorant is just, I don't know, it's something special. I mean, to add to what Shelby was talking about and what you were talking about, Sapphire, I've never seen anything like it. Like in CS, there was maybe dozens of girls on ESEA that were competing that I can name off the top of my head, but now there's like dozens of teams signing up for Game Changers. Like it's awesome. But yeah, I would say that is kind of one of the more underlooked aspects of kind of like stopping opportunities for women.
And you're probably going to be a bit modest here, but I'm going to add to this. And like if you go into the Valorant community, like there's so many women in there that's saying like Cloud9 White is the reason that I'm playing. Like they gave me a reason to play. I feel motivated by them. And I think the women's teams like Cloud9 and Dignitas and CLG as organizations that have been in women's esports for a long time have really inspired these other women to jump in and compete. So I know there's a lot of women today probably watching that are very grateful for that.
I mean, and you were mine, right?
Oh my
Not
gosh,
even to
yeah.
exaggerate. I think
Yeah.
it is definitely a trend that women inspire women, right? The more representation, the better. And like women like you were like my direct like idol and inspiration. So like when I was an observer and for now. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Let's move over to Nikki. From your perspective in running community, what are some of the challenges that women's only events have historically faced, and how are you as a community organizer helping to address those challenges?
So just touching base on what Mel said, yeah, the base level of casual esports is very toxic. It's, you'll see girls get harassed daily. They'll come into the server, they'll be like, this is what happened, this is what I'm going through, and it's a tough process for girls and even adults to take that kind of harassment in game. It's hard. It hurts a lot, and if you're not used to it, it definitely takes a toll on you. Like, you want to play this game constantly every day, and then here you are just getting berated over things that you can't even control. It's it's not your fault. But for an actual like creating events and whatnot, we get a lot of it's been mostly positive for the most part. But you do get those guys that are like, why do they have to be separate? Why do we have to segregate it? Well, you see now, there's an issue that we face within gaming that you guys just don't understand yet, and you haven't quite faced it, and you can say you have, but it's a different ball game for us here, and we're doing our best to foster and grow this community so that they can be prepared for the next level of gaming. And not everybody's there yet, and not everybody has had the chance to get there. So that's the point. That's the point of Valorant. So we're trying to grow and foster this community, prepare the girls for the next level of gaming, and hopefully one day soon, it's not going to be segregated communities. We're going to be able to all compete and partake in everything without having to face too much level of toxicity.
That's great.
And I think to Nikki's point, one of the first things we get asked is, why are we hosting women's only events? Why are we separating women in this way? Could it potentially stunt women's growth in Valorant and esports in general? And I can definitely see where the criticism can come from. And I think when you're creating a women's only event, you have to think about the long-term implications. If you're just doing a one-off event, I think there's some amount of potentially it feeling like a PR move, right? And I think when I'm talking about Game Changers specifically, that's something we really wanted to think about. Is we didn't want to be the WNBA. We didn't want to separate women and men and have a whole other women's league. All we want to do is provide additional opportunities and visibility to women who are interested in growing, learning, and playing in this space. And so I think when you're thinking about challenges, you want to think about what it means to bring everyone back together again. And how do we get there? You know, how do we go from just women's only events to having mixed gender teams, having women's and male teams competing on the same playing field? And the reality is we're just not on the same playing field right now. And it's not because of skill. And so that's the real problem. And that's why, you know, my response to those questions is always, we need these additional events. They're not separate in the sense that we're saying you can't enter other VCT events if you're a woman, you know? It's more just, here's more opportunity. Here's another opportunity for Cloud9 to inspire future pros. You know, here's another opportunity for you to learn more about the game, to grow in not just professional space, but beyond that. And so I think companies really need to think when they're doing diversity and inclusion events, you know, especially women's events, why are you separating it out? And how do you get to the point where you can bring it back together?
That's really great. You know, I've always been a long supporter of the women's events because, again, there's historically just been such a small pool of female women competitors, and it's really, really hard to be a pro. So when you have a much smaller pool of players, yeah, it's just going to be hard to obviously find those tier 1 players. But these women's events clearly are inspiring other women to start competing, and then we're going to grow that pool of players. Actually, one of my new favorite examples, I just learned this and I'm super excited to share it. I don't exactly remember the name, but I believe it's like the CSI effect or NCIS effect. You know, the forensic science TV show. Forensic Sciences used to be at least 75 to 80% dominated by men. And then they put that show on TV and they put women in those lead roles. And a couple years after that, Forensic Sciences is actually now dominated by women. And they attribute to that back to those female role models in those leading actress positions on television, bringing more spotlight to women in that position, and it inspired other women. And I just see like this direct translations to women's teams and women's esports. So I know that's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's a really exciting real life example.
That is awesome. Oh my God. I've never heard of that. I'm sorry. That's so cool.
Yes,
wow.
It is super cool. Like it's totally exactly what we're trying to do here, which is great.
I was gonna say to Shelby, what you said earlier, like some people arguing that it would stunt like women's growth. I mean, the results don't lie. I don't know what to say. We've beaten 2 pro teams that are all men, so go with that, which you will, really. Ever since FTW Showdown, we got signed. We have the resources we need to become better players and a better team, and we've taken down 2 teams dominated by men that are professional, signed, salaried. So I don't know what else they can do. I don't know how they can argue against the results.
Like that. Results don't lie. They definitely don't. Like you see all of these girls starting to compete, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I had another question that's later, but like Mel just triggered it. So I want to bring it up right now because this is something I've faced too in the observing world. It's like, okay, you know, I've proven time again that, you know, on Reddit, you guys say I'm the best observer, yet why are you criticizing that I'm on the talent list again? Like, oh no, it's a female. So Mel, I'm going to go to you with this question. You know, what are challenges you've encountered as a competitor within esports that your male counterparts probably didn't? And, you know, it certainly seems like one is just like, I've proven myself many times, and how many times do I need to validate it? But any other things?
Like, to add to what I mentioned earlier, like one thing is like, if you want to even be considered good as like a woman, the standard is so much higher than as a guy. You have to do so much more. You have to be perfect. You have to be an exceptional player. You have to be amazing in every way to even be considered as like good. You know what I mean? So the fact that you have to go above and beyond your male counterparts is definitely something that's like, I've experienced, and it's kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, this is pretty annoying. And I think there's definitely there's a lot of added pressure because obviously there's a lot of like eyes on you, and there's like a huge spotlight on like, oh, the girl team, how are they going to perform? And so I'll be going into a match, like if it was any other guy team, they're going to be like, okay, it's like a match, whatever. Obviously there's some pressure, there's always nerves involved no matter what, that's just part of the competition. But obviously it's like, oh, here I am in the server, like the Reddit comments, here we go on Twitter, everyone's watching just to see. There's just so many people that watch out of hate, like they watch and they want to see you fail. And that's something that it's like, obviously that comes with any team, like Sentinels, I'm sure every team gets that, but it's like, I want to see you fail because you're a woman, right? It's like, I want this initiative to be proven wrong. It's like, what? Just thinking about things like that, and that people are doing that is, I don't know, it's a bit I don't know, not demotivating, but it just takes some getting used to.
Yeah, it's hard, you know. Yeah, we how many times do we have to prove ourselves sometimes, and that can be frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
So Allie, let's move over to you. You know, obviously you're creating something really amazing here in collaboration with Game Changers. So you talk to us about the design process from Nerdstreet's perspective when designing and operating an event like Game Changers. I'm sure there's probably some complications too when it comes to running an all-women's event.
The complications are really just logistical barriers to overcome, which in any event, that's always the situation. So the process kind of starts, you know, a pitch would come in, whether it's from a third party or if it's something that Nerdstreet wants to start doing themselves. It gets handed off to the competitive operations department, which is the department I'm from. And then we would design the tournament itself. Think about number of teams in it, the prize pool, what the structure is it a one day? And so on and so forth. And then once we have the structure, the logistics, and all of the rule set and schedule designed, we would pass that off to the marketing team and the broadcast team. We would basically we use Monday to do everything. So we would go in, communicate, have a meeting, talk about what's happening, what the plan is, and then we would start assigning assets, run of show. That would be the broadcast would take care of that. Marketing and design would work on broadcast graphics and social graphics. And then once everything is kind of ready to launch, the operations department puts up a registration page, and then we go live with it. And then once it's live, a lot of support questions come in, whether it's Discord or intercom or email. So it's kind of like a 24/7 job. You're always keeping an eye on socials for questions, on Discord for questions. Kind of hard to separate, especially in the pandemic, work from life, especially when I work in my bedroom. But the process goes to there to when we go live. And on the days that we go live, we have everyone who's working the event have a time in which they show up. We go over a meeting, assign tasks for the day, and just go from there. A lot of the actual live event operations online is if there's a broadcast, we have a couple admins on Twitch moderation and clip collection for content. And then we have those who aren't on that overseeing what we use as Battlefy for operations, overseeing chat, see if teams have problems or whatnot. And then in certain situations, we can't have an admin in every single game, so we're on live support. So people come in and out of the voice call to talk to us, to ask questions. On the women's side of things, I would say that I've seen the most just like I not in a bad way, but like the most direct questions ever, where people are pulling snippets from the rules and asking me like, how does this work and whatnot. And I would say that it comes from a lot of the new faces that are in it. They're inexperienced, they're learning about it. So I love getting pinged at 1 a.m. It's actually really nice to see people going over the rules like, so I don't understand this rule, can you break it down to me? Because in all honesty, I'll go into a tournament that's not all women's, and people will say they read the rules and then they didn't, and I'll have situations where players and coaches are screaming at me and they're like, we didn't see this rule set, and it's like, this is the rules. In this situation, I've had almost no issues in regards to people not understanding the rules, and it's because people analyze what they're looking at and they come and approach the source directly.
Yeah, it's amazing how much work has to go into these events and how many folks are involved. I don't think everyone who watches a broadcast realize that we don't just press play and go. There's so many people working in the background. with Game Changers, NSG, and Riot teams working on these shows. So it's really cool to hear more about how it all works, and even, producing the events. I feel like I'm still learning new things all the time.
Yeah, it's an incredibly complex process. I'm always amazed by Riot Games and Nerdstreet are handling all of it. And I guess I'll give a shout out here to Valorant. Like if you want to learn some of the parts of this, I know Valorant has different training programs around casting and production and observing. So it's a great way to start, get started and learn about these for potential future careers. Ali, back to you. What is your aspiration for future events, and how does this fit into Nerdstreet's greater mission?
I mean, my personal dream would be to run the biggest and baddest tournament of all time. But when we relate to running all women's tournaments, at the end of the day, Nerdstreet's mission is about accessibility. The mission is to increase access to equipment and technology that is required to be a successful competitor. So when we look at accessibility on a tournament side, that's why we're involved in all women's tournaments, to provide women with the opportunity to compete. However, at the end of the day, all of Nerdstreet's events are co-ed. So I want to see more women coming into regular events, not just all women's tournaments, because that's where you're going to get more experience. I feel all women's tournaments are amazing and they provide the first step into competing. But if you want to continue that grind, you got to go into everything else. You got to sign up on random $500 cups you'll see around. Just throw yourself into the ring, and I would say just take a yes, say yes to every tournament opportunity you get.
That's great advice. Mel, back to you. So, you've had some experience in CSGO before transitioning to Valorant. You played on some multi-gender teams, and now you're on a full women's teams. What are some of the differences between those two teams, or are there any?
I'm not sure.
The first thing I would say is that on the better co-ed teams, there's definitely more experience, right? There's these guys who've been playing the game for ever. My first LAN teammates, they were veterans of the game. They played the game for 10 years, and they were always winning the local LANs. It was always a batch of 15 different guys, and they would just swap between who won each LAN and be I gotcha, I won this time. So definitely experience. They've been taught by others, or they've just played the game so much that they know the structure, what the structure of the team looks like, and everything down to the last minute detail. For girl teams, it's there's a different sense of camaraderie. I guess in sisterhood is the closest thing I can say. Some people assume it's you people only play on girl teams because they can't make it to co-ed teams, but I think one thing a lot of people look over is that the camaraderie you have on a full women's team, where you have women that you can relate to in your struggles. Everyone's relating to the same struggles you're going through right now. Everything we're talking about, imagine if it was 4 other people in a team environment. Everyone knows what each other's going through. They know exactly how to support them because they've been through that. And it just makes for a really awesome support system. And we obviously talk about things that only girls would talk about, right? So it's that aspect is really cool too. Like I said, relating back to sisterhood, it's just we get to talk about things and relate about things that we can't with guys. I'm not saying that's a deal breaker or anything. I just would say that's definitely a huge benefit that people overlook.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's just, my answer back to people is why all women's team? Why won't you play with men? My answer's who cares? Just play with the 4 other people that you want to play with. This is a video game after all. You're meant to have fun. You're meant to have bond with your teammates. And if it's 4 other women that you want to grind with and find success with, then great. If it's a co-ed team, that's great too. I think, to a lot of us here, it doesn't matter who's on your team, as long as you're happy, you're fun, you're surrounded by the best possible teammates, regardless of, whether it's skill or sisterhood. It's all good. It's all good. So that was a great answer, Mel. All right, so obviously, we've got Game Changers starting here, and this is something that's very important to all of us here. So, Shelby, let's start with you. How would you define success for events like Game Changers?
I think the obvious answer that a lot of people would, discuss when it comes to measuring against goals is viewership. And I think there's a lot more beyond viewership that is a little bit harder to measure, but I think is, equally, if not more important when it comes to these kinds of events. I think a big one's going to be increased fandom. I mentioned this before, but I think growing the fandom for teams and players specifically, how many fans tune into their auxiliary team or personal streams, following on social media, all that kind of stuff. It seems like it might be silly, but it honestly makes a difference over the long term, and we really want to grow with fandom. We want people to look at, multiple of our women's and men's teams and have fandom for them equally. And I think another thing that is a little more difficult to measure is fan sentiment around these specific female teams and players. Do they see them as equal to male pros? Do they believe they have a similar skill level? Even if the numbers show that they do, what do they think personally? Do they reference them when they talk about the best Valorant players in the world? Those are really more difficult to measure, but I think that they speak to, women being part of the normal esports scene, and it's something we definitely want to try and measure more. I think overall it's not a numbers game, and that's really what I want to emphasize, is that while numbers can be definitely important, that's really not the whole story. We want to look at the long-term ramifications of these kinds of events, and that's going to be hard to measure immediately, but definitely trying to figure out the best way to do that.
That's great. I'm so glad you said sentiment. I'm just going to add on top of that. It's like, okay, I'm a hardcore Reddit user. I probably read every thread on the Valorant competitive subreddit, but like one of the things is I've noticed over the last 6 to 9 months, there's more threads about the women's teams and players. That's awesome. That doesn't happen in a lot of esports. And on the off chance that someone does say something negative, and about Cloud9 White, for example, like those get downvoted and the positive comments get upvoted. And like, it's hard to measure, but like, the community is kind of bonding together around these teams and saying like, no, like, oh, you're not going to trash Cloud9 White. Like, they're awesome. They're amazing. Mel is killing it. And that toxicity is being like pushed out. And that hasn't always happened, and the women are being celebrated for their successes, and the women's teams are being talked about on social and Reddit and on stream. So it's a very difficult thing to measure, but one that like if you just kind of eyeball it, you can see more conversations are happening, and that's great.
Oh, many so
Go ahead,
Shelby.
No, go on, Mel.
I was gonna say, like, Sapphire, I'm right with you. I am such a serial Reddit user, probably bad for my mental at this point. But over like the past 4 or 5 years, I've always been like a little Reddit user. But like I can definitely see the shifts because I used to go on Global Offensive, and obviously there'd occasionally be like a thread on women, which, like you said, like way more threads about like the women teams in the Valorant competitive subreddit than there are ever before. And a lot of the times it would be so negative. It would be like, oh my god, like you guys are like infesting me with your negativity. I need to go. Like this is like so bad. Like it would usually be the negative comments getting upvoted, and people just throwing around random studies about, oh, women are genetically X and Y, and I'm like, oh my god, here we go again. It would always be in every single one of those threads. I think you've seen the same ones, and I'd be like, wow, this is, and the positive comments would be the ones like at the very bottom, and they'd be in the controversial, and I'm like, wow, this is yikes. But in Valorant competitive, it has been like the complete opposite. It has been so awesome to see.
That's awesome. That's great.
And to add to that, I think there's some kind of establishment of like normalcy when it comes to having these conversations and these posts. Like the narrative shouldn't necessarily be, in my opinion, oh, they're women and oh, they're good. It's like, oh, they're good, and then that's the end of that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like the fact that they're male, female, whatever, I feel like moving away from that part of the narrative. Like that's exciting because they're women. It almost makes it harder for us to push through those barriers. Whereas like I feel like if it's just referencing some good play or something like that, it's just because they're a good player, and that's really the end of that conversation.
Yep, I'd say a lot. I get the question a lot from people like, what can I do to support the women's scene? And like it's kind of just that, like celebrate them because they're awesome, not because they're women. And I know a lot of us probably have when we're playing, like we'll get comments that they're trying to give a compliment and they're like, wow, that was a really good play for a woman. It's that's the worst thing you can say. And so, you know, just celebrate all these amazing women because they truly are. Like this weekend in Game Changers, there's a lot of Radiants, there's a lot of Immortal players playing. They're in the top percentages of the game, and that's something fantastic. Nikki, from the Gallant's perspective, how would you define success for events like Game Changers?
I would define it more as like, yes, of course, fan base is huge, and getting support in total is a huge thing just for any kind of professional aspiring gamer, for sure. But I think the largest success from this is just girls looking up to those who are competing, and they're seeing that this is possible and we can do it. You know, these events are so influential to the girls within the server, especially. You could see they're asking, are there streams? Can we watch this? We want to cheer on. They have watch parties. It's amazing to see this. And it's amazing to see, you know, there's a teen on Bind Crouch who's, you know, yeah, see, Mel, you're laughing, you know. There's just so many girls that this is so influential to them, and they want to be able to aspire to something greater. They just, you know, slowly they're getting there. Maybe they're iron, or maybe they're bronze, you know, whatever. But they're so excited to see things on the screen finally and be represented in the gaming community, that they're just so excited, and they're so ready to begin this journey. And of course, not everybody's going to be a pro player, but at least we can all experience the competitive sense in one way or another. And that's what's going to continue to grow this community of not just female gamers, but gamers in general.
Can I just say that I cannot wait for LANs. I will be at the Gallants meetup. I'm going to just say that now on the record. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I don't think it's clicked for me yet. Like, there's going to be so many awesome girls at these LANs. I just can't wait.
I know, we were talking about this, me and my administration. We're like, we're so excited for this, just to be there and be part of like this movement. We're just like, this is gonna be so cool. We're gonna finally meet people who will like really know what we're going through, and we're all gonna hang out and just have a party, and it's just great.
We gotta get like Guinness World Records out to the first LAN, because I guarantee it's gonna be the most females at a tournament ever.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
So down.
Mel, from the team perspective, like what does success look like for you regarding Game Changers?
Got you backside.
I mean, we're definitely going to win it. I'm not really too concerned. Just kidding. Well, not really. Anyway.
I really love the confidence behind that. Yeah, we need more of that.
I'm dead. Obviously, the narrative is that we're obviously the pending title of the last like FTW showdown, like the last Riot major for women. Are you asking like what Game Changers would look like for us specifically? What success would look like?
Yeah, do specifically own it, Mel.
Oh yeah, we just want to destroy all the teams. I'm gonna be real. We just want to make it very obvious, like we're still the best team. Like we're the one that has been here from the beginning. So I mean, we're still on the grind. Primarily, our interest is like Ali said earlier, is competing in like the open tournaments. That has always been our main goal. And obviously, it's just a chance for us to hold our title, just to make sure everybody knows, you know, just to make sure everybody still knows.
That's great. And then Ali from Nerd Street, what does success look like for you?
I would say that it kind of is two different parts. One, I want to see more women in tournaments in general. I was going to say that the first time I ever interacted with another woman on LAN was Thea, when she was at GexCon 2018, and she was on a co-ed team. She was the only girl, I believe, competing at the time. And I was like looking over the registration like, oh, this is, and I looked up and I was like, oh, like I saw someone just like me standing in front of me for the first time working in Nerd Street for a couple months, in tournaments at least, on LAN. So seeing more women online and on LAN, and most importantly, seeing more orgs get involved in supporting the women's community and providing them with the resources and opportunity to compete. Right now, there's only 4 official orgs that have a signed roster. And I am leaving out Genji on this just because they are their content creators, but they're not like an official team. So I have a whole list of orgs that have not signed a women's team yet, and I want to see those orgs pick up teams that are competing in this tournament.
That's great. That's great. I'm gonna just add to the Thea story. Like, that's one of my favorite stories in esports. Is Thea's actually a member of Dignitas's women's Valorant team, and we had met her, I believe it's like 2016, and she was 13, 14 years old, playing on a co-ed team, and she met the Dignitas women, and she just came up and she's like, I didn't know other women play. I didn't know there's a women's team, and like she was just in shock. She started like crying when she met us, and we were just like, we didn't know how to handle this. Oh, please don't cry. And she's like, I'm gonna be on your team someday. Like, it was just that definitive. She's like, that's it. Like, I'm focusing every effort, and here we are many years later, and she's she's on a top 4 women's Valorant team. So goes to show like that a lot of we don't even know we're role models. We don't even know we're inspiring, and that's something like we need to embrace that. It's something that's actually taken me many years to really embrace and realize that we all here today are help shaping the futures for other women, which actually is a perfect segue into my next question. What are the steps can established pro players and leaders within the industry do to help elevate women within the industry? Mel, let's start with you as a pro player. What can you do to help elevate other women?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I'm going to kill it. I just need to be excellent and everything I do. I just need to be an amazing player. I need to be a good entertainer. I need to be a good content creator. I need to be a good leader. I need to lead the way so others can take inspiration from my actions. And if I do well enough, then they can look to me as a good role model. That'd be the first thing I would think. Second thing is not remaining quiet on certain issues. You can't just stand idly by when you have a platform. You need to speak up on things. That's also a really big part of it. I wouldn't also say not to ignore certain issues because they don't affect you, and also avoid some of that. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this, but the Queen Bee effect, where it's oh, now a woman has gotten success in a male-dominated community. Now it's all hers. No one else can do it, and she's gonna badmouth all the other girls or other women that try to get involved. And so that's actually, I think, has a Wikipedia page and everything. And just making sure you're actively avoiding that mindset because it comes more often than you think, and you need to be aware that just because you got here doesn't mean you're not the only one, sis. Other ones gotta come in. You have to welcome the whole community, right?
That's great. I'm gonna add to that. As you said, we can't be quiet. We need to speak up, and that actually goes not just to other women. It goes to men too. Yes, there's going to be toxic people, and it's hard to change their ways. But if you're in a game with someone being toxic, don't laugh. Don't egg them on. If you're laughing and supporting that toxic person, you're only elevating the problem. Don't be scared of being called a white knight. It's okay to speak up. And beyond just speaking up, just tuning in, supporting players' streams, their social, supporting the Game Changers event. It all makes a difference. All right, Nikki, what can you do and other leaders in the industry do to support and help elevate women within the community?
Honestly, just provide them with the same amount of opportunities as their male counterparts. It's so important to introduce, females to every aspect, production, competitive, all the back end things that you don't think are very large, but they play such a large part in making events and making the future successful. It starts at the bottom and you have to build your way up, and that's with anything that you do. So just provide the same opportunities and allow people to grow. We're not all going to be perfect, it's hard to be perfect. So we're going to fail and we're going to trip sometimes, but just allow us to grow and allow us those same opportunities. I think that's really just the basic gist of it.
Great. And then Shelby, obviously, being at Riot, you interact with Valorant pros and League of Legends pros. What can you do and what can they do to help elevate women within the industry?
Honestly, I think to add what Nikki said, there's a real gap in knowledge about what jobs exist in esports outside of just being a pro player or even being a caster or analyst. Most of my colleagues, women and men, stumbled into their jobs by accident. Genuinely, if I hadn't gone to Worlds in 2018, I don't know if I'd be here. And so I think more training programs, more curriculum, more, working with local colleges, universities to showcase all the opportunities that exist in esports. It's such a new industry. I think that we're just getting there to where things are more established and people are starting to understand everything that goes into this. But, I think there's jobs out there for people that are passionate about games, but maybe aren't the best in the world. I wouldn't say I'm an incredible League of Legends player, but I work on LCS events because I love the LCS. And so I think if we can bridge that gap, we're going to see more representation in all aspects of esports. And the more you see those faces, something we've been saying so much in this panel, the more you see this representation in every aspect. You see them playing, you see them casting, you see them working at an event when you go live in person. You feel that community around you. You feel lifted up and supported to grow, in whatever that may be, whether it's casual or you want to make a career out of it. So I just want it to be a less unique situation to see women in these positions. And I think if leadership focus more on not just the typical, things that they can point to for opportunities for women, we'd see a lot more growth there.
That's great. Allie, over to you. What can you do as a leader in the space to help elevate women within the industry?
It's kind of, I sound like I'm repeating what everyone else said, but providing opportunity at the end of the day is what needs to be done. And sometimes that opportunity won't be provided because those who are providing it have a toxic mindset behind them. So the mindset that specifically that this is a popular thing on TikTok at the moment, where women use a certain audio to showcase their hobbies, is that men believe that women are in esports for the wrong reasons, that we're here to get attention, that we don't actually enjoy the game, we don't play the game, we don't have hobbies. That's the kind of narrative that needs to be crushed for people in the space to kind of get over this barrier of providing women with opportunities, is just believe women and trust them, because we're here for the right reasons. We want to play this game. We're just as competitive and sweaty as all of you.
Yes. This is true. I get really sweaty when I play. All right. Last question. This is a tough one, but an important one for the future. I'm going to leave it open, whoever wants to start, because it's a tough one. How do you hope esports will change in the next 5 years to be more inclusive for both women and minorities? Like, what is your ideal world in the next 5 years? Anyone want to jump in?
I could jump in here.
Go for it.
I kind of spoke about this in a previous question, but I think there's this predicament right now, and I'm going to use kind of Hollywood films as a reference here. I'm going to call it like the Ocean's predicament, where I'm talking about like the Ocean's 8 all-female cast and the Ocean's 11 all-male cast. And there was a lot of sentiment and reviews that spoke about typecasting empowerment. You're kind of this overemphasis on something like race, gender, sexual orientation, where it almost feels like pandering rather than just including them in the narrative. And that's something I see bubbling over into a lot of diversity and inclusion initiatives, and a lot of women's events specifically. I don't want women to just be the narrative because they're women. And I want the industry to support women and minorities in a way where they are part of the narrative because they're just part of the story. They're not, the story isn't, oh, these are minorities and women, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think that's a very, important aspect of this. I want to see growth in esports with women and minorities, but that not to be the only thing we reference when we talk about these kinds of players, these types of, people that are in the industry. I think in an ideal world, I'd love to see mixed gender, female and male teams competing at that level playing field. And it's not because, they are female or mixed gender that they're getting those opportunities. It's because they're, just as good. Mm-hmm. And so if we see more diversity in players in our broadcast and the production side of things, I think ultimately we're growing towards that, and I'm hoping that it continues. But I want to just continue to inspire and grow that type of thinking.
Yeah,
touched. Yeah.
branching
Yes.
off on that. Valorant right now is an all-female community and female identifying community. But that's just the baseline. Our entire goal is to literally just foster and help people grow to the point where they can start competing in whatever they want to compete in. I personally don't always want to do female events in the future. I want to be able to provide those opportunities to the C9 whites in the future and all of that, because at a certain point, we're going to be doing an injustice to those female players if we just cap them at a certain, right there. It's not fair to those who want to develop further. They need to be able to continue. So for myself, our goal is to just see everything combined, Let everybody who wants to play the game, be competitive, be sweaty, as we all like to say, you know what I mean? Play the game that you want to play and just have fun with it, enjoy it, continue on wherever you want to go. Yes, that's my 2 cents.
Amen. Mel, what does the ideal next 5 years look like for you?
Pretty much exactly what Shelby and Nicolette said. Just more integration and not just like, oh, these girls get picked up or integrated to these teams just because they're girls, but more like, yo, these girls are good. Like they are good as a player goes, like standardized, right? Like get them onto more equal teams, like get them onto male teams. Maybe in the next 5 years we see like a lot of more women on like tier 1 teams. I think one thing too, I don't know if this actually falls within 5 years. I don't know what you guys think, let me know, but I would love to see like this kind of like esports thing start in like high school, maybe even middle school, where it's like, what if we got computers into like these high schools and like now anyone can play them, and now we can get more women started and interested in gaming earlier, in competitive gaming, right? Like you're gonna tell me if you didn't have like 5 nice computers in the library and it's like you could take a esports class or like an esports extracurricular and you just show up and you get to like play the game and you get like to compete under your high school. You gonna tell me that wouldn't be nuts? I feel like that would introduce so many more women to esports and it would be just insane. Because just speaking from my experience, I never talked about gaming in high school. That was a secret that I kept to myself. That was just between me and my online friends. There was no clubs for gaming, and if there were, there was like all guys, and I don't want to be in there and be like, oh, I don't want to be the girl in here. I don't want to be the only girl in here. Come on. So I think that would be really cool to see, but I'm not even sure if that even applies within 5 years. I feel like that could take a while.
I will say
Yeah,
that's actually already happening a little bit. I know under Riot's umbrella specifically, there definitely some more emphasis on starting in high school and high school programs, and even now college scholarships where, folks who are good at the game join a college team, kind of like you would if you were a great volleyball player, football player, etc. So I don't know that it's specifically targeted towards women, but I definitely think that it's starting, and I agree. I hope that continues over the next 5+ years.
I agree with.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I agree with Mel's sentiment about starting in high school, because I was the opposite of Mel. I didn't understand why it was frowned upon for me to play video games. I played it all through middle school, and getting into high school my freshman year, I quit because I was getting bullied because of the fact that I was vocal about playing video games. So starting at a very early age, getting into middle schools and high schools, and reminding even little boys like, hey, girls aren't playing video games because they want to impress you. Girls are playing video games because they want to play, they want to compete. So getting rid of the toxic mindset is the first step, and giving accessibility to younger kids is the second step. And I think that that's what would cause real change, is because it starts at a younger level.
Nikki, you had something?
Yeah, stop making it weird that girls play video games, please. It's totally fine. It's even just a weird norm to talk about it now, and I'm 25. Like it's just not normal for people to be like, why do you play that? Because I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm actually really passionate about like educating parents too, that like it's actually fine for women to play games. This is normal. And showing parents that path that yes, like your son or daughter, like they might not be a pro gamer. That's really hard, but like there's so many careers opportunities that if they have a passion for gaming, this can pave the way for a very successful career. And I do think it starts at that high school, middle school level.
Yeah, if you told my parents that I would be working in esports, they would be like, what? What are you doing? What are you talking about? That's not a thing. I think they're still a little confused sometimes.
Yeah. My parents didn't come around until I started traveling, and they're like, wait, can I come with you now? That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, my mom was the same way. I also want to say too, I feel like having it in a high school environment means like their playtime is kind of supervised, and like their interactions with other people might be a bit supervised. Because I think one thing too is over the next 5 years, I really want to see the internet and esports just be a safer place for girls. Like, I mean, I think this is something that's really not talked about at all. Is like I feel like it can genuinely be dangerous being a girl, like a little girl online. Like, how many stories have we heard of, like these young women talking to men that are like super way older than them, like, and they reach out to them because they're vulnerable, and they're the only girl in the room, they're the only girl in their community, and they reach out to them. And I think that's one thing that a lot of women kind of, not even women, girls, sorry, literally girls, they can't even consent to this awkward relationship. And I think a lot of talent actually becomes distracted by these people that reach out to them that are like way older than them and having a very inappropriate relationship. And I think that's something that's really not talked about, really. And I hope that the internet becomes a safer place for these young girls.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know this can and should be a wonderful space, but it is on all of us. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that we're creating a safe space, an inclusive space where we're educating both women and men and young boys and young girls about being smart, but also just finding your place, finding your safe space, finding your group of friends, your network to support you. And it truly can be something special. And I know we all feel that. I know that's why we put in all the hours that we do really to create this as a beautiful space for not just men, but not just women, but men, minorities, everyone. We want this to be a super inclusive space, and we're getting there. Like every day, every single day, it truly gets better. So I think with that, that's it for us. I want to thank all of you. This was incredibly insightful. I know all the other people in chat are going to feel the same. Thank you so much for bringing your insight and helping to inspire other women to jump into VALORANT and esports and all that makes this place a very exciting space. So let us know, please, if you guys are listening. Let us know if you want to see more panels like this. We hope you do, but shout us on chat or social. Let us know. We want to build this as a space for everyone. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and please take some time to support all the incredible women that have made this event possible. VCT Game Changers. The best thing that you can do is just continue to support women in esports. Like I said, downvote those negative comments on Reddit, upvote the great ones. Continue to support the women, tune into the matches, tune into their streams, cheer them on social, and let's continue to make VALORANT esports and esports in general an incredible place for everyone. Thank you. Bye.